Oh my god, it's Jeremy Till.
Yes, it's me. I suppose you have a few questions.
Do I?
Please mind the door.
4th floor, please. So Jeremy, what's the book about?
It is based on two premises. First, architecture is a dependent discipline. Second, architecture, as profession and practice, does everything to resist that very dependence. The book explores that resistance.
What do you mean by dependency?
That architecture, at every stage of its existence, from design through construction to occupation, is buffeted by external forces. Other people, circumstances and events intervene to upset the architect's best laid plans. These forces are, to a greater or lesser extent, beyond the direct control of the architect. Architecture is thus shaped by external conditions, more so than by the internal processes of the architect. Architecture is defined by its very contingency, by its very uncertainty in the face of these outside forces.
That's kind of obvious. What's the big idea?
No big idea, but maybe a big problem. Namely, architects tend to deny this dependency. They feel more comfortable in a world of certain predictions, in linear method, in the pursuit of perfection.
That's kind of obvious too. Doesn't sound like much of a book if it just states two truisms.
Right, but what if the books is about the clash of those two truisms and the gap that opens up between them? The gap between what architecture as practice, profession and object actually is, in all its dependency and contingency, and what architecture wants it to be, in all its false perfection. What then? And what if? The book argues that we must bridge the gap by opening up to dependency, not as a threat but an opportunity. That the inescapable reality of the world must be the potential for a reformulation of architectural practice that will resist to present marginalisation and find new hope. What then?
Then I might buy that book. Architecture Depends was written by Jeremy Till and published in 2009. Jeremy splits his time between academia, having taught at institutions such as Kingston, UCL, Sheffield and Westminster University. Currently he resides as the Dean of Central St Martin's in London. Till is also a practising architect at his wife firm, Sarah Bookersworth Architects, and takes on judicial roles and REBA competitions. In this respect, Till makes her an excellent candidate for writing such a book, as his experiences allow him to have an equal perspective from within the field of architecture.
The book is split up into three central sections of differing themes. This highlights how the role of the architect and architectural community in general exists as a removed group within society. This allows for architectural propositions which in actuality are not informed by the society outside of the profession, which therefore fails to meet the needs of the everyday person. This detachment is a product of the belief that the knowledge held within the profession is only passed on to those worthy of the task, something which begins within the education of architecture itself, a system inherited from the bizarre model of institution, whereby students are encouraged by this inherited example to live a strictly adopted lifestyle prescribed by their peers.
Part 2 explores how the physical existence of architecture in time and space has become narrowed down to a single moment or image in time for the architect, when in fact the building takes on a whole new existence once it becomes inhabited and weathered through use and time. The freezing of time allows the architect to edit the world, taking the parts that are full of aesthetic or technical potential and discarding those that are not. It reduces the architect to an object which one can absolve oneself from any real responsibility. It also highlights how the everyday person will experience architectural space differently than an architect, from the inception of the idea through to the use of the constructed building. The section argues architecture needs to be considered as situated in and through time.
The final section discloses the common misconceptions within the vague accepted lexicon of the profession. An example explored is the notion that good aesthetic equals good ethics, and discusses the many pivotal architects who have believed this and whether their endeavours have been successful. The key ethical responsibility of the architect lies not in the refinement of the object as a static visual product, but as a contributor to the creation of empowering spatial and social relationships in the name of others. The book references the works of many other contemporary academics, predominantly books from the 80s and 90s which have been key to his teaching. As well as this, Till's career within architectural education allows him to draw on his experiences, enabling him to propose a well-informed thesis. Till even gives the example, one can learn almost as much as overhearing a conversation in the canteen queue as in the lecture theatre. Since the publishing of the book in 2009, some of Till's arguments don't hold as much weight as they used to, such as his critique of the profession of architecture and its governing bodies, including RIBA and the LB. One example, Till argues, is the stagnation and backwardness of the Institute, as it has always had a male president, though in 2009, the year of publication, Ruth Reed became the first female to govern the Institute, and in 2011, Angela Brady took up office. He also criticises the RIBA Code of Conduct, as it acts more as a deterrent of misconduct, a bare minimum of requirement that architects should meet. This code is now defunct and no longer in use.
One of Till's key beliefs, which is carried through the book, is that mess is law. Although Architecture Depends is not written as a direct response to a single text, its aim is to dispel common notions adopted in the field, which are generally sympathetic to the principles used and created by modernist icons. Texts such as Le Corbusier's When Cathedrals Were White argue the case for cleanliness, architectural purity and utopia. It's the opinion of Till that these are unrealistic and unobtainable propositions. Corbusier states that through a coat of whitewash we will perform a moral act to love purity. Till counters that it can only represent the instant moment of the fresh beginning. After that, it is condemned to grubby failure.
Till's main objective in the book is to dispel the common misconceptions of what the role of the architect entails, such as the idea that the architect has control of all aspects of a project, from the initial design sketch through to the inhabitation, as well as to expose how the architectural community is so far detached from the everyday society that it imposes concepts onto which then fail in their role. The text is important because it's a critical reading of the profession by one on their own. Till sits within the established institutes of architecture schools in England and RIBA itself. Till is keen to forward the notion that ethical architecture is achieved through a lo-fi mentality. He compares this to the example of Elvis Costello. After recording music in a studio, he listens to the music through a cheap transistor radio. This is to ensure the message of his music remains, as should the key concept in architecture succeed in relation to the everyday user, not just architects.
In the short term, the accessibility of Till's work is a factor which gives the book the potential to be understood and read by many, maximising its effect. The long-term influence of the book cannot yet be understood as the text was published in recent years. However, it could be presumed that the book will help to enlighten students and those in the profession to negative aspects of the architectural community, in the hope of being able to bring about change that will provide a better architecture for society.
The text is clearly structured into 4 segments: the introduction, part 1, 2 and 3. Within each part there are a series of chapters which break the book up into manageable segments and sub-chapters. The book uses a variety of devices such as classification. At the beginning of the book, Till argues his main philosophy that mess is law, which is the basis for the book. An argument is then raised within each chapter which is relevant to this. At the end of each chapter, Till narrates an anecdotal, real-life situation which he has found himself in, which simplifies and demonstrates the argument discussed, helping to reinforce its relevance.
The divisions within the text, along with his colloquial style of writing, makes for an extremely accessible book. Till obviously feels that there is a problem within the profession. His style of writing means if any change can be brought about, those who are within the architectural education are the best people to start with, making the book ideal for those who are not fully professionals. At 195 pages, the book is a manageable read. Till uses images sparingly and only when they seem truly necessary. It seems as though every point is well evidenced, both giving his arguments believability, but also enabling people, such as students, to become aware of many of the seminal architectural texts listed within the book.
The aesthetic appearance of the book gives clues as to what content lies within. Till has used the image of a fancy dressed bear in the new National Gallery in Berlin, this being a light-hearted dig at Mies van der Rohe, whom Till had to make a study of an architectural drawing when he was a student. This was an experience he found extremely unenjoyable, knowing Mies would have disliked such an object being displayed alongside one of his buildings. The book itself is a critique of the architectural education, and so this cover is highly appropriate. So I think the first point is how well-rounded an argument he's able to make, because he's been working in the profession, but he's also taught in architectural education. So
his benefit coming from both sides
yeah.
of the playing field.
Yeah. I just think that probably from that understanding, he's been able to make the book really accessible.
And that's probably one of the best things about the whole book itself, is the fact that it's a lot more readable than many of the books which we get given to read, and the kind of language that's used, it's not heavy generally.
And the size of the book as well.
The size of the book, and it's enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the part that makes it enjoyable, I guess, for me was the anecdotes which are spread around in the book, which sort of gives us a break from the theories, and like
they put them into real life context.
Yeah.
Which shows that they're actually valid and relevant.
I mean, I think we agree most of the arguments that you put forward, but they do exist, and they're
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like the part about education, which we probably have a good
grasp of because we're going through it.
Which I could relate to.
I think that also, apart from him being from this background, I mean, the way that he puts, when he does have an argument, the way he puts it forward, like, this is also for students, I think, like, they're all really well referenced, and that gives us the chance to kind of pick up on all these, like, letters of text, like by Le Corbusier, people like that, Gropius, that, like, we can look at after reading the book.
Yeah, there are also a lot of texts that are not written by architects or any, like, architectural theories or anything like that, like loads of texts from psychology.
Yeah, which enforces the idea of the book that architecture needs to be more than just architecture.
Yeah. In part 2, where he talks about space, there's a bit of a lull which sort of goes on for quite a few pages, but not much. Well, which wasn't as interesting as the other.
It kind of detracts from the accessibility of the rest of the book.
It loses momentum.
Yeah.
But then luckily that section is kind of picked up with the section on lo-fi afterwards. There's this kind of middle awkward section, and it just picks up steam again, and his arguments kind of come back into force.
I think another thing that isn't too good about the book is, well, I mean, the book itself, I mean, the conclusion isn't like it's like an anti-conclusion, whereby he's basically saying that he's run out of time writing the book and has to be published, but also I think it's kind of weak how he gets around that by saying it's kind of like a starting point of ideas.
He wants to leave you with something to think about, but
to start
it's a bit of a cop-out.
It's not a completed argument itself.
And then even writing that and sort of trying to explain himself as well.
At times his own personal views, they kind of come into force, and they're just not important within the books. We don't need to know about them at all. He mentions like his anti-Thatcherism in the 80s.
There's several political points in the book which
it's just not relevant to what he's talking about.
Support what the ideas.
Maybe gets kind of slightly carried away.
Yeah. So the anecdotes kind of, they're at times it's kind of an uneven amount of interest, but like whereby he knows that some of the writing he's done,
we're losing track on it.
Yeah, so he gives us that. I mean, that's a good point and a bad point. The anecdotes are good, but at the same time, it's kind of allowing for the proper written text that isn't as casual to not be as interesting, perhaps.
Oh.
Help! I need something to turn this! Hurry!
Will a 2B do?
What?